and eating meat.
Well, I'm happy to be here. So Doc asked me to come. Now, he's my boss. And so he said, "Would you like to come?" I said, "Absolutely." No, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
Good. Well, listen, we've got a few pictures up there, but first of all, before we get to what you did at Houston, just tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in sports and maybe your family, things like that.
Grew up playing all the sports. I played football, basketball, baseball, track. Had 10 varsity letters in high school, and was actually recruited. I could have gone anywhere in the country to play basketball, but not football. But I wanted to, it's Texas, right? The joke is, what do you call basketball in Texas? You say, well, it's off season. And so I wanted to play football, and University of Houston they'd offered me scholarships in both, and some other schools had, but they wouldn't let you play both. And so that's one of the reasons I chose University of Houston, and then I never played basketball there, but that was the reason why.
Your parents, they support you as you were growing up? Brothers, sisters?
Yeah, my mom is one of 11, and so big family, and so a lot of cousins and all that. And my younger brother, he was also a quarterback, a good athlete, and so we just grew up playing sports
But you were poor.
And getting spankings, and then playing sports and getting
But you were poor when you were growing up, weren't you?
Well, we didn't know we were poor because we didn't have anything. So, but we were not well off for sure.
Good. How did you do in football in high school? When did you know that you could throw 85 yards?
Well, I always knew I could throw it far, but we ran the wishbone in high school. So you old guys remember the wishbone, right? And so we only had like 2 passes. We had veer pass, and John Jenkins, who was the offensive coordinator, we ran 23 veer pass in a game, and so you come down the line to the left, you fake it, you drop back, and you throw it, and I overthrew the guy by about 35 yards, and and he says, "Well, he's got a strong arm. I don't know if he can throw it to anybody, but he's got a strong arm." And so they offered me a scholarship on that one giant overthrow, and
good.
And I high jumped 6'9" as a freshman in high school, and I could do a lot of the stuff, but wishbone to run and shoot. That's like one extreme to the other.
How important was it, or what influence did Andre Ware have on you when you knew that he was there as the quarterback?
Well, when I came in, I came in and there was a couple of junior college guys there, and Andre and I were suite mates. We were adjoining rooms, and we became good friends. But we competed, and in everything we competed. But it was a weird relationship where we actually pulled for each other as we competed against each other, and so to this day, I talk to him all the time, and so it was just he got hurt. He'd broke his arm. I had arm problems early in college, and so it didn't matter who played. We were going to be successful. But he was a starter. I was the backup, and then he left for the NFL.
What's it like to be 20 years of age and have tens of thousands of people calling your name and yelling at you when you come off the field?
Well, they also boo you. And so it gets you some perspective pretty quickly, that you learn that people are fickle, right? And and you realize, I guess one of the things that I realized very early was that I didn't work harder. I worked at it. I loved sports, and I loved to get better at it. But I realized that I was given a lot of ability. I could pick up any ball. Anything athletic I could do. I could dunk a basketball in the 7th grade. But I realized that was just a gift that was given to me, and I also realized that it could be taken away. One bad day could end it all. So I never held on to it too tightly. And I knew that, people were weird. They valued really weird stuff like sports. They elevated sports, and that was not something that I felt was worth elevating.
When you got to University of Houston, had you already developed a Christian faith? Where did your faith come into them?
So my mom's family they were strong believers. My grandmother, she was just just the oak of the family. Grandfather was too. He passed away when I was young with cancer. But so I knew the gospel. I believed the gospel. But I had actually come to a place in college where what I was seeing was a bunch of kind of weak, namby-pamby, Christians. I'm thinking, I don't need this. If that's what it is, I don't want to be part of it. And so I just decided this wasn't for me, and the Lord had other ideas about it. My girlfriend at the time, who was, she had become a Christian through Young Life, and she basically said, if you don't become a Christian, then you can go find somewhere else to go. And so I came to Jesus. It's a really easy decision. But there were several things that redirected me to the Lord, and that was really a life-changing time.
Now, is it true that football players get someone else to do all their homework for them when they're in college?
No. But I went to business school. I was a business major, and I remember going to my first business class, and I remember thinking, really? I mean, you got to learn the terminology, but for the most part, they're just telling you how to run a lemonade stand on the corner, right? You make it, and if you make it well, you better have good ingredients, and then you have to tell people you made it. That's marketing, management marketing, and then you sell it. Location would matter, and then you count your money. That's finance. I'm going, what the heck has taken 4 years to learn this? A moron could learn this. So I didn't go to class, but I got B's, so I did okay. I'd show up and I'd read the chapter summaries the night before the exam, and I'd take the exam backwards, and usually they tell you the answer if you do backwards, and so I did okay.
I'm kind of getting disappointed.
I know. It's not a good story, I'm telling you.
Beginning to think about.
Don't listen to this, kids.
So, what drove you to excel? There's lots of people out there with talent, lots of people who have done things. What drove you to keep pushing to the next level?
I hated to lose. I mean, wreck the checkerboard, throw the pieces, hate to lose at anything, and so that was probably a big part of it, and then loved to compete. There was not a sport, a contest, anything that if you could make up a contest out of it, well then we're going to try to get good at it. So it was just hardwired in. It's not something that was developed. It was just always there.
When you went to Houston, there was a coach down there, Jack Partee, and he did this run and shoot offense. Mm-hmm. What is that?
Basically, it's just option routes. Every route is not predetermined, and so there's option routes. But I do want to say something about Jack Partee. Jack was he was one of the junction boys at Texas A&M. I roomed with his son, Ted. We're still close friends today, and he was the man in my life that I saw immovable character. We tell you a story. We went to it was his first year. It was my freshman season. We had gone to play the University of Wyoming. We lost late in the game. We had 21 returning starters on that team. All 11 returning defensive players were starters. And on the plane coming back, some of the guys were giving the stewardess a hard time in the back of the plane. And as we were getting off the plane, she was standing there and pointing out the players. And he came to the meeting on Monday, and I'd never heard Jack raise his voice ever. And he read a list of 17 players, 9 defensive starters. He kicked them off the team, and he said, for the rest of you, it's a normal practice. We'll see you out there at 1 o'clock, and that was it, you know. And that was Jack. He was just a man of immovable character. And so I never saw him coach, you know, but he had great coaches. I heard the stories behind the scenes from other coaches about how he was actually a great coach of coaches. He was a leader of men. But I saw for the first time that someone could say it and do it. And boy, that just was like cement to me.
You set some records at the University of Houston. I've got a list of them here. You set or tied 33 NCAA records. Did I say that?
NCAA, yeah.
NCAA, sorry. During your football career. What was that like, breaking record after record after record?
I've got two sons. My oldest is 29. My youngest is 26. They're both football coaches. And my oldest is the head coach. My youngest is the offensive coordinator. And they put in, they're installing the offense that we ran in college. And then my oldest ran at Blinn Junior College. And so we were watching a video of one of these old games. And my youngest, I was watching with my youngest, who's the offensive coordinator. He says, "Dad, you weren't very good." I think I went 40 for 70 for 700 and some yards, but 30 incompletes is not, you know. But it was just normal. That we didn't know any different, you know. You just go out there and play, and that was normal, you know.
You threw for 716 yards. That record was not broken for 24 years. Mm-hmm. Connor Halliday and then Patrick Mahomes broke it 2 years later. That's a long time for record.
Especially, you know, with the way that the game, and a lot of those records, you know, like the touchdown passes in a season. This was back. Are there any University of Texas people in here? Just one? Yeah.
You can take them.
Bless your heart. Yeah. So back then, it was the Southwest Conference, and the president of the NCAA Rules Infraction Committee was a Texas grad. And they were struggling to beat Rice at the time, right? And so every team in the Southwest Conference was on probation. SMU was on death penalty, and so U of H we were on probation, and so we couldn't play, you know, we couldn't go to a bowl, and so those records were all in 11 games. Now they played, you know, a 12-game season. They have a conference championship, and then so, you know, it's 13, 14, 15 games, and so those records stood for a long time. We still, you know, the yards per game, touchdowns per game, all those records I think still stand today.
Single game touchdown passes 11. It has never been broken at the NCAA level. Tell me a little bit about that game. How do you have enough time to throw 11 touchdown passes in a game?
I think the more impressive one was 7 in a quarter. And what happened was we were playing Louisiana Tech, and the score at the end of the first quarter was 3-0. And our offensive coordinator called us, you know, we had the ball and, you know, switch of possession, so we're going to the other end. He called the offense up and he said, "If we don't score every time we have the ball, every one of you is fired, starting with you, Klingler." And
motivation.
Yeah, so, you know, a little fuel of the fire, and yeah, it was just, again, it was just running the offense. And
do you watch a lot of football these days?
I don't. And it drives my wife crazy, because she loves to watch football, and she can't believe that her husband and 2 sons who are football coaches don't want to sit and watch football with her. So she reprimands us every Saturday and Sunday. But I get to watch it on Friday nights.
He's got a wife who is good for him.
Bless her heart.
You were a Heisman candidate. 2010, the 50 greatest college football players to never win Heisman Trophy. You didn't win. You told me you were over actually in Hawaii, were you, when it was going on?
We played our last game of the season, because we couldn't go to a bowl game, so we played Arizona State in Japan, kind of became our bowl game. And Arizona State came into the game ranked number 1 in the country in pass defense. And that was the game we threw for 716 yards or whatever. Turns out they weren't so good. But we were over there during that.
What was it like to be nominated for a Heisman Trophy?
It was normal. I mean, you know.
No, it's not normal for me. I haven't.
I jokingly say I'm the only normal person I know. All right. What's normal for me isn't normal for anybody else. It was just normal. It's just what we did. Andre won the Heisman, and he was drafted, and it's just what we did. And so it wasn't anything spectacular. In fact, most of the time when we'd watch film or we'd see all the places where we could get better, there's a lot of room for improvement here. And so it wasn't anything that ever would go to your head. There was no reason for it.
Before the internet, Sports Illustrated was a pretty important magazine. You were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, throwing some dynamite, I believe.
That picture right there is, was it Sparklers? And they had this idea, and they wanted to do this, and they were taking the whole day to try to get this picture. And I was telling them, they said, well, we got to get this to get you on the cover. I'm like, I don't want to be on the cover, so, Anyway, so they wanted to come back and redo it. I'm like, I ain't redoing it. So put somebody else on the cover. I'm not. And so they did that.
Thanks for talking to us today, because I know you don't really like to do interviews. I heard that you went in to the office at Houston, and they said they had 60 interviews for you scheduled that day, and you just walked out.
Yeah, well.
Did you go back?
No. No.
It doesn't appear to me, I've talked to you lots, that the applause of people really meant an awful lot to you.
No. So right now, I'm pastor in a church down in Brenham, Texas, and I preach about half the time there, and we're going through Ecclesiastes right now, and it's become in a weird way, one of my favorite, maybe my favorite book, because he explains what should be obvious, that and what I knew really to the core of my being was that as fame doesn't last. I always say the death rate is 1 per person, right? And so what happens to the rich man? Well, he goes to the grave. And I've never heard anyone say, boy, I wish I'd have just made a few more dollars. Then I'd be happy, Or I wish a few more people on Facebook liked me. Or my wife says, quit talking about Facebook, because that's not what people use anymore. I'm like, well, I don't know what to use. But, so fame, fortune, I've had, been poor, I've had money. None of that stuff was important to me. And I think it was wired in by family, and probably a lot by the men in my life. Jack Pardee, my college coach, John Jenkins, Oscar Cripps, my high school coach. Just men of great integrity that taught us what was important and what really wasn't.
You were drafted 6th overall back there to Cincinnati Bengals. Were you excited about going to Cincinnati?
I didn't know any different. My junior year, the NFL teams were wanting me to come out. If I would have come out, I'd been drafted to New England as the first pick. And I went back to college, and they'd ask, well, why are you going back to college? I said, well, because because I made an agreement with them. I agreed that I'd come here, and they agreed to pay for my college to get a degree. And I don't think you go back on your word. So I went back and then was drafted to Cincinnati, and it didn't go well there, but that's just how life goes.
I got a quote from you. It was open season on the quarterback back then. What they call targeting now was just called tackling when I played.
Oh, yeah.
It's different back then.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
You got hurt after you started your second and third seasons. I think even part of the first season you started some games. And after your third season, you got injured in the off season. The injuries I've got down are that you've had a torn trapezoid, sprained knee, numerous concussions, broken jaw, broken leg, and something with your back.
Broken neck, broken back. The list is long.
So when that happened, when these injuries started happening to you, I think you stayed another 3 years at Cincinnati. Then you went out to Oakland
yeah.
Raiders. Did you enjoy that time out there?
I did. It was in between my second and third year that I hurt my elbow, and so I had arm surgery after that season, and James Andrews, who was a famous surgeon back then, I came out of surgery and he said, "Well, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first?" And I said, "Well, I guess give me the good news." And he says, "Well, the good news is we found the problem." And I said, "That's the good news?" The bad news is you'll never throw again. It's a career-ending injury. And so I was thankful to get 4 more years in the NFL. I went back the next season. I threw my first ball July 1st, went to camp July 18th, and then I broke my chin in half in the first preseason game, which probably prolonged my career because that whole season then I could, heal up a little bit with the arm. And so, but yeah, look, I wouldn't change anything. I'm thankful for.
After Oakland, you were headed up to Green Bay, and then you decided to retire. Did they have a quarterback up there? Or,
Well, when I was coming out for that draft, Ron Wolf was the GM of the Packers. He had been with the Raiders in the 70s, and then he had gone to the Packers. And they wanted to draft me with the third pick, and they didn't think they could get me, so they traded for a guy named Brett Favre, who turned out to be okay. But Brett was down in Atlanta running the run and shoot, which was the offense that I had. So it just, success and failure so often is not dependent just on what you do, but on the people around you. And that's certainly true in sports. That individual success only comes when everyone else does their part. And boy, there's something to learn in a family, in the body of Christ. There's so many great lessons to. Do
you have good memories of your NFL career?
I had several concussions, so I don't have many memories of.
Who gave you the hardest hit that you ever?
Quentin Coriat played linebacker at Texas A&M, and that was back when they were called the Wrecking Crew, and boy, they were good. And on their defense, they had 9 players that were first or second round draft picks. They had 4 first round draft picks playing corner, right? So they were just incredible defense. Here was a play I scrambled out to the right, and this was back when at College Station at their field they had a track around the field. Well, he hit me on the sideline, and I landed on the second lane of the track. And I thought, holy smokes, what was that, right? Well, he got drafted, so that was my hardest hit in college. He got me later in the Astrodome. He hit me, and I was laying there, and if you've ever been in the Astrodome, you look up, it looks like a Ferris wheel. And I'm laying there, I'm going, why am I at the circus? And I was laying there, and I realized what was going on. So that was the second time he got me. The third time was in Indianapolis. So he was drafted in Indianapolis. I was in Cincinnati. We were playing them. He comes on a delayed blitz. I see him coming. Our receiver had broken free down the right sideline. I said, okay, well, I need to stand here. I can get it off before he gets here. Well, he hit me in the left arm. And the next day, it was black and then purple and then yellow all the way over to my right side of my chest. And, he was... there was something wrong with that guy, man.
When your career was coming to an end, I know that you had opportunities for coaching. I want to ask you why you didn't go into coaching. In fact, after I hired you at DTS, I think Jack Pardee gave you a call.
Yeah,
and,
he did.
And you came to me and I was trying to convince you you had given me your word that
Yeah.
you would stay
Yeah.
at DTS. But
Yeah.
you loved him. You would love to have coached with him. But
Yep.
but why didn't you go into coaching?
So this was later. I'd already have arm surgery. I was at the Raiders. Ray Perkins was the offensive coordinator. He was a Alabama coach and famous coach. And he called me out and said, "You need to come out and learn the offense. It'll probably take you 2 or 3 weeks." So it was a Monday morning. We had our first meeting. And we started at 8 o'clock. And at 10 o'clock, he left the meeting. He said, "I need to go talk to Joe." Joe Bugle was the head coach. And so he was gone for probably 15 or 20 minutes. He comes back in and says, come with me to Joe's office." And so we walk down the hall and walk in. And as I'm walking into Joe's office, the secretary hands me a envelope with a plane ticket. I'm thinking, well, this isn't good, And Joe said, "Have a seat." And he said, "Ray said you don't need to be here. You've learned the offense in just no time." And he said, "I know that you've got arm problems and all that." He said, "What are you thinking about doing after you're done playing? Would you like to coach?" And I told him, I remember, I said, "Look, every player thinks about coaching. The game means, it just teaches us so much. And so, of course, I think about coaching, but can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, do you have any regrets?" And I'll never forget how he responded. His head he was sitting behind his desk, and his head just dropped, and he didn't look back up. And he said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Well, can I ask what it is?" And he said, "I went in to kiss my son goodnight one night, and he was 15 years old." I said, "Well, I won't do that. I'm not willing to sacrifice." I had Luke was like 2 years old at the time. I'm not willing to do that. And so when it came time to retire, immediately, he said, "Well, if you ever change your mind, you got a job on any staff that I'm on." And so the phone started to ring. "Will you coach? Will you coach?" And no, I wouldn't do that. It wasn't until Jack called. I got a call from the athletic director at University of Houston. His name was Dave Maggart. He was the guy who built the Miami Hurricanes program, hired Jimmy Johnson and all that. And he said, "What do you think about the program?" I said, "Well, you need to hire some old guy that can come in and reestablish a winning tradition. I don't know if you remember the name Coach Snyder back at Kansas State back in the day." I said, Coach Snyder had come back, something like that. He said, "Do you have any recommendation?" I said, "I might call Jack. I don't know what he's doing, but boy, I'd hire him in a second." I didn't have Jack's number, but I had Ted's number. Ted was his son, so I told him to go talk to him. And he called me the next day. Dave Maggart called me the next day, and he said, "Jack said he would do it on one condition." And I said, "Really? Good. What's that?" And he said, "That you'd be his offensive coordinator." Well, if Jack asks you to jump off a building, you just say which one, that's how highly I thought of Jack. And so that was really the first heading down the coaching trail that I'd considered, but thankfully that fell through. And then I was stuck with you. Thankfully for me, not for you.
About 5 or 6 years actually before you retired, I think it was after your first rookie season, you were in a Bible study, I think, with a pastor named Vodi Bakum.
Yeah, Vodi.
And what did he say to you? You're just finished your rookie year.
Yep, I had finished my rookie year. I was back in Houston. So I had known the FCA director of Houston, and I've known most of the Oilers because I was good friends with Warren Moon, and we had the same agent. So I knew a lot of the Houston Oilers. It was not the Texans, but the Oilers back at that time. And so they were having a summer Bible study, and so they invited me. So I took my wife, Katie, and then the next week, my brother, who looks a lot like me, he had a girlfriend, and I remember Cody Carlson was one of the quarterbacks. He said, "What's this Klingler guy? He's got a wife and a girlfriend. He's bringing a Bible study. What's going on here?" But after that first Bible study, Vodi Bakum was teaching. Maybe you've heard the name Vodi Bakum. He's a really good man and good teacher, but eschatology is not any good. But other than that, we got to talking after after the study, and he said, "You need to quit football and go to seminary." And I said, "I'm not in a hurry to go to cemetery. I don't know what you're talking." And he says, "No, seminary." I said, "Well, what's that?" He says, "Well, it's where you go to train to be a pastor or a professor." And I was like, "Well, I don't want to be either one of those." Well, he kept after me for about 7 or 8 years, and so finally, years later, he said, "You really need to stop training horses and go to seminary." And I said, "Okay, well." I was interested in the Bible. I had just heard a couple sermons, and so I was trying to figure out, well, how do you know how to understand the Bible? And he said, "There's only 2 places to even consider going." And he had gone to Southwestern and Southeastern, so I thought that's what he was going to say. And he said, "No, either Trinity," which is where you went, or Dallas, which is where you also went. I said, "Well, Trinity, why Trinity?" And he starts naming people like I'm supposed to know who these people are, like they're football players, because they have Roger Staubach. I'm like, well, they have D.A. Carson. I'm going, I don't know who that is. And I said, "Okay, well, what about this Dallas place?" He says, "Well, they have everybody else, right? And they've got a campus in Houston, so Mr. Spiritual here, I just went online and applied, and they accepted me. I didn't pray about it. There was no leading of the Spirit, none of that. I just, all right, well, let's go in." Walked into my first seminary class, and I came home and told my wife, "I'm going to get a PhD because I want to know the Bible like that man." And that's how it started.
And so you did your THM?
THM, and then PhD.
In Bible exposition, I'd just like to say that.
THM in BE, and then PhD in Old Testament.
Yeah, well, you can't win everything, but...
Yeah, well, yeah, and yeah.
Why'd you do the Old Testament? Because we wanted you in our...
Well, my interest was use of the Old and the New, and the people who were writing in that field were all New Testament scholars. And I was teaching in a Bible college at the time, and this thought occurred to me that, it sure seems like everything Jesus says and does comes out of the Old Testament. And I started to think about, well, how does that work, and how does the Old Testament relate to the New? And so I wanted to learn the Old Testament. And several in the department, including, one of my mentors, Charlie Bayless, was not happy with me at all. He said, "You're going to turn into one of them." But I didn't. I was saved from the dark side, and now in the Bible department.
Hired you 2012 when I...
2012 is when I came back to DTS.
I was forced to hire you. I think the president came and said, we need him. But no, it's wonderful to have you. But then in 2016, Case Keenum and you had both worn number 7, and it was retired.
Yeah.
To have a jersey retired at Houston, a former player must meet at least 2 requirements, among them induction into the College Football Hall of Fame, win a major national award, be all consensus All-American, win a conference MVP or Player of the Year award, be a 3-time All-Conference first-team selection, and hold at least 5 NCAA records over a 10-year span. Mm. You never mentioned to me that you were getting that award as we taught together. Like, why not? Like, I would have gone and seen you.
Well, yeah.
You just don't talk about yourself.
Yeah.
If I wasn't asking questions, you wouldn't talk about this.
Yeah, because it's not, I don't know that it's of any value. I mean, when it always bothered me that you be invited to go talk at a church because you were a football player. How stupid is that? Right? Or I mean, just logically, this is even before I had any really theological training. It made no sense that somehow my little football stories could help your eternal salvation. My experience could help. My experience is my experience. Your experience is your experience. We all have the same testimony, right? There's only one testimony. You were saved by grace through faith in Christ. That's it. That's your testimony. Doesn't matter, And what really bothered me was the way we elevate not only sports, but even elevate, if you're drinking and smoking behind the bar down at the pool hall or something, or bowling every night, and then you come to Jesus, somehow you have a testimony, right? Or if you're a drug addict, but if you actually raise your kids right, if you raise them so that there's never a day where they don't know the Lord, somehow that kid doesn't have a testimony. Now, how ridiculous is that? No, we have the same testimony. And so I never felt like my experience, my sports or anything.
But it is a means by which you get a chance to share. You know, I mean, you win the right to be heard in some senses by...
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a stupid platform that we built up, you know. I was sitting in the living room one day, and I knew that the TV was on ESPN. I didn't know what they were showing, but they were talking about how this guy had the best season of his career, and I'm like, what are they talking about? They're really talking him up. I look around, and it's poker. Poker's on ESPN. It's not a sport. It's goofy, the stuff that we elevate, right? We elevate all the wrong stuff. And, we certainly do that with sports. And we get our morals way out of whack in a lot of different ways. And so I just don't have a whole lot of...
There's a lot of young guys here tonight. If you could say something to some of these young guys, they love sports, they hope someday maybe to play it professionally or something, what would you say to these young guys? What would you say to some of these men who are parents of young guys and girls who are desperate into sports? And then what would you just say to all of us?
I'm so thankful for every day. I was telling Doc this last week, I went to New Orleans, had a battery of tests run, physical tests and all that stuff. And so I'm not dying quickly, I'm just dying slowly. That's what good health is, right? Good health is dying as slowly as possible. But I try to be observant, and I've observed that the death rate is 1 per person. I don't know if you've noticed that, right? And we tend to forget that. And we tend to forget that you only have this day once. If you had a week left of your life, and if you knew you had 1 week left, how would you spend it? Would you spend it the same way you're spending it now? Probably not. And so trying to wake up every day and say, what's important? Make a list of your priorities. Make a list. What's important to you? What's truly important? What's truly invaluable? And what doesn't really matter? And then think about the time that you spend worrying about things that don't matter at the expense of the things that do. So and you're never too young for that not to apply to you, right? Or you're never too old that it doesn't matter. In fact, one of our old professors, Dr. Ken Hanna, when Doc Hanna was for his 70th birthday, I went over and helped him put together a weight set. I'm going, what are you doing? Putting together a weight set. 80, he was, putting on a treadmill. I'm like, what are you doing? And this guy was just relentless. It seemed like the older he got, the more he lived a life with some urgency. And I asked him once, I said, Doc, what are you doing? It's time to slow down. He says, no. He says, he says, when I go, I want no gas left in the tank. Mm-hmm. I said, well, that's good.
I'm going to give an opportunity for a few of you to ask some questions here in a minute. Let's start with a couple, maybe the younger kids who maybe want a question. Then we're going to, I think there's a couple microphones that are going to come up. But as they're getting the microphones, talk to us. You not only teach at DTS, he heads up the PhD program in the Bible Exposition Department, does just a wonderful, wonderful job there. You preach in church, but you have a podcast ministry that is just exploding. I think some of these men would love to get on and see what you're doing. Teach Me the Bible. Yeah. Teach Me the Bible.
Teach Me the Bible podcast. It started, we hired a youth pastor at our church, or not a youth pastor, a worship pastor. And he came to him and he said, I feel like we teach sound doctrine and sing heresy. Can you help me learn the Bible? And I said, well, yeah, our pastor's name is Tim Webb. I said, Pastor and I, we sit and talk every night on the porch about the Bible. Why don't you come join us? And he said, well, why don't we make a podcast about that? He might as well have said, let's build helicopters. I don't know what he's talking about. And but he showed up with all the equipment, and so he's the kind of the brains and the whole thing behind it. But it's gone really well, and we've got a lot of folks, and and so our helping the people of God understand the Word of God is what we're about.
You've held a couple of conferences. You use a lot of our PhD students to come and teach. How many people are kind of listening to the podcast a week now? Or?
Yeah, we've been running right around 7,500 a week, and
7,500. That's good outreach.
Yeah, it's a good ministry, and
I listen to it. It's a great podcast for you to learn the Bible, teach me the Bible, and so encourage you to. I know you listen to a number of podcasts, but if you just want to know the Bible, just the Bible, Teach Me the Bible is just great. Well, listen, time for a few questions. Do we have a couple of the younger guys, and then we'll go for...
We got a couple of our teenagers with handheld mics. We'll take around anybody who raises their hand and wants to ask a question.
You got to be under 18. Ask a question. Holden, you're shaking your head here.
under 18, you still have all the answers.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, if you younger guys want to ask, you can just put up your hand any time. Jesus, you want to? You're in charge of the microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. This one's an easy one. What's your favorite Bible verse?
Favorite Bible verse?
Ooh, I don't know that I have one. That's going to sound bad for my wife when I was going to seminary. I don't know if I've told you this. I was coming home, and then I started teaching, and she was mad at me forever. And look, this is how to be a stupid young husband, right? But anyway, she was mad at me because she says, "How come you feel like you've got to destroy all my favorite Bible verses? Can't you just let me have some of them?" I said, "Well, if any of them were in context, then yeah, you can have them." And so when my sons, they're in high school, fast forward, they're in high school, and the deal was you get your letter jacket and you put your Bible verse on there, and so I basically had they had an oral exam. You got to explain that verse to me and how it applies to you correctly. Otherwise, you're not putting that stupid verse on your Bible. And so I don't know that I have probably John 3:16. It's hard to beat that one. But I always ask, as soon as someone says John 3:16, I say, "Can you tell me what John 3:15 is?" And nobody can. So context is everything.
Some questions. Right back here.
Yeah, how strong was the Christian presence in your college and pro football days, whether it be other players or organizations? Did you see it permeate a lot of that?
In the NFL, it was strong. We probably had 40 guys on the team coming to a Bible study. One of the guys that I've become very close with over the years after, his name was George Hinkle. He was a 6'7" defensive lineman, and his wife's name is Sharon. And Sharon was telling me that the first time they were coming to the house, he didn't like quarterbacks because he was a defensive lineman, and he didn't want to come, so he was grumbling on the way up, and he said, "I ain't going to this quarterback's house to eat this frou-frou food." But there was a big, really strong. Now in college there wasn't. We had one guy's name was Dennis Kennedy, and he was kind of the team evangelist and the believer, and he would go knock on all the doors and try to invite you to Bible study, and we'd all turn the lights off, act like we weren't there, because they love the darkness because their deeds are evil, But
Maybe that's your favorite.
Yeah,
Bible
verse. That might be the most applicable Bible verse. But anyway, but no, in the NFL, it was really good. There was always a really strong, and I think that there's a point that when you have realized what you thought would make you happy and it doesn't, it really starts to force you to search for real significance. And that's probably what's happened a lot in the NFL.
Other questions? Right over here.
With your interest in the Old Testament, I'm curious, what discovery have you made in the Old Testament that has most changed your perspective, maybe overall and then maybe also on the New Testament?
I could answer that, but he'll, Deuteronomy 30.
Yeah, what would you say?
Deuteronomy 30, I would.
Well, Deuteronomy 32, Deuteronomy 30 is Deuteronomy 28, blessings and curses. Deuteronomy 30, the restoration of Israel. But Deuteronomy 32 is this. Paul quotes it. Paul quotes it in Romans 10, and I remember going, what's he doing quoting out of Deuteronomy? And I went over there, and it's the story of the Bible in one chapter, and realizing that this is a unified narrative that runs from Genesis to 2 Kings, and how all those other books contribute to that. And I'm a Pirates of the Caribbean fan, and in the first movie, if you've seen that movie, Elizabeth Swann, she's on the boat with Captain Barbossa, and she says, I don't believe in ghost stories. And Captain Barbossa says, you best start believing in ghost stories. You're in one. Well, it doesn't matter if you believe in the Bible or not. You best start believing in it because you're in this story. This story has been told. It is the story of the progress of revelation of God's redemptive history, and it's come to your doorstep. And how do you respond to it? And it's going to affect your eternity, right? And so just realizing how the Bible relates to redemptive history and relates to us today is just changes everything.
Another question.
As a father who had high level of success in sports specifically, talk about the line that you walked with your boys as they grew up and started to play sports, where you pushed them, where you let them have their own journey, and not compare them to you.
I don't think that there is a better way to teach kids character than sports. You learn self-sacrifice, you learn team, you learn discipline, you learn self-control. All of the lessons that you're going to need in life to be successful as a father, as a member of whatever job community you're going to be in, you learn it right there in sports. And what we've done with sports is a travesty. We've made it about individualism, about individual success. We treat our kids like they're free agents, and we're their agent to ensure that they have success. No, you're not training your kids to have success. You're training them to deal with failure. Because life is a game of getting back up and not quitting. And boy, they better learn that. I want them to fail and not quit. That's where you learn it. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're not playing this game forever, right? You get to play a kid's game for just a little while, but you can learn some great lessons. And every kid who plays a sport can learn those lessons.
2 more questions. Oops, 2 boys right up. Well, okay, we'll go for 3 because they're all young guys. So let's let them go. Oops.
That's okay. We can hear you. Go ahead. How does football, Christianity, and faith fit your everyday life? Football doesn't. My 2 sons who are coaches, I love this quote of an old high school coach that I've known for a long time. He said, "Football is character education." And so I watch my sons. I help them with the X's and O's, but they are in the character education business. How does faith, Christianity and faith affect my everyday life? That's all there is. This is either true or it's not. If it's true, it affects everything. If it's not, it affects everything. So you've got to decide whether this is true or not, and you best start believing in it because you're in it, right? And so I don't see how this doesn't apply to every single aspect of your life.
Good question. Good question. Over here, a couple of guys up here, I think, at this table.
Did you ever play against any Hall of Famers?
Several. One, which everybody knows now, that knew back then and knew now. There were two guys that when I was in the NFL that were just better than everyone else. One was Barry Sanders. I could tell you all kinds of stories about him. And the other was Deion Sanders. It was easy to play against Deion because if he was over there, you threw it over there. Deion was in Cincinnati with the Reds. He was a baseball player. You remember this. And so I got to know him. He's a great guy. We'd go fishing. But, yeah, it wasn't hard to play against Deion, but it was sure fun to watch Barry Sanders. So there's a lot of great players back then. Reggie White was another one, unbelievable player. Yeah.
Another question?
If you didn't start football, do you think you would have been here?
Be here? I don't know. That's a good question, right? Everybody's got one trail that you go down, right? And that's your trail of life, and this is the only one I know, right? So that's kind of a sovereignty of God question, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. He's asking the good questions.
Yeah. These kids are.
You need to come to seminary.
Yeah.
And
Start recruiting.
We're
now,
recruiting.
yeah.
David wants to have you in his PhD class. And,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, David, thank you for coming and for sharing with us. I know some of you may have a question or two. I think, Dave, you'll stay around for a few minutes. Thank you for living for the Lord the way you do, for teaching the Word the way you do, for challenging me. We're good friends, but he calls me when he's driving home from Dallas to Brenham, and he's got time in his hands. And he just, what do you think about? And but you just love the Word. You're thinking about it all the time. And thank you for doing that. You're making a real good contribution to the church.
Well, thank you. And I just want to say this before I go. I'm at Dallas Seminary because of the character of one man, and that's this man right here.
Mark, why don't you come forward and you can close out.